topic that is given to me is infectious and immune disorder. Now, as far as immunology aspect of EDIC 1, to be honest, it is very minimum. So EDIC part 1 rarely would test immunology related questions. There are a few aspects which might be important. I've covered that at the end. This class will be 90% infectious disorders. Major ICU infections, including VAP, CRBSI, fungal infections, endocarditis, all of these can be classes by themselves. They are extensive domains, but I will try to cover the important aspects as much as possible. And then, if you have further questions, I would be happy to answer those. Right. So the first question I think that we always ask is, what organism am I trying to reach? Right. So that's where it becomes very difficult, very important to try and localize the site of infection, because only when you're sure about the site of infection you can be a little more sure about the organism. Because, like a urinary tract infection, the causative agent of an UTI would be very different from the causative agent of a community acquired pneumonia, which would again be very different from the causative agent of a CRBSI. So kinetics, pharmacodynamics, renal function, all of that, do you think adequate concentrations are achieved, or are you underdosing this antibiotic? And also the organism, do you feel that this organism would be susceptible to this antibiotic? So these are, I think, the four questions that we must ask before we choose an antibiotic for a patient. One of the main problems in critically ill patients is that we tend to underdose them. Why does this happen? So if you think of a typical young patient who comes to you with septic shock, you've pushed in 5 liters of crystalloids. This patient is on high dose of vasopressors, patient is ventilated, you've even started a CRRT. Rule number one, get cultures unless this is delaying treatment. So if it is a meningitis in shock, you don't have to do the LP and send the CSF before you give the antibiotics. You can just give up the antibiotic. If this is not delaying treatment, then get cultures first. Okay. We have a very different antibiogram. So if we were to get a septic shock, we would obviously start them on at least a meropenem, because we have very high incidence of even community acquired ESBLs in our country. There are countries where obviously community acquired ESBLs are very low, and so they would probably not start with the carbapenem. But by and large, you would need to give an empirical therapy according to your local antibiogram, right? So that has to be data which is coming from your own country, ideally coming from your own hospital. Day 1 or 2, you review cultures. If you have a multiplex PCR, then great, use it, right? And you review the clinical response. Is the patient worsening? Is the patient improving? Day 3, if you feel the patient is improving, or you don't have any hard evidence about any ongoing infection, then try to de-escalate the antibiotic. And day 5 to 7, if your patient has improved adequately and you other biomarkers have come down, you might as well stop the antibiotics if appropriate. So this is usually the life cycle of antibiotics that goes about in the ICU. Sepsis is a life-threatening organ dysfunction which is caused by a dysregulated host response to infection. This definition still holds true, right? So how do we define this life-threatening organ dysfunction? We look at a SOFA score of more than equal to 2 points increase. Organ dysfunction, this is sepsis 3, this still holds true. So your SOFA score has to rise by more than 2 points. Please remember to know what are the components of the SOFA score if you don't remember the score itself. So remember, it looks at 6 systems. You have to know what is that particular component that it is looking at from that particular system. Like for the respiratory system, it is PF ratio, for instance. Okay, so you have to know these. Just looking at concentration dependent and time dependent antibiotics. Obviously, in concentration dependent, your peak concentration becomes the most important. So you look at the Cmax by MIC ratio, while in time dependent antibiotics, you look at the T greater than MIC. So you look at the time when this antibiotic remains above the MIC. So that becomes more important. Pathogens would depend on the part of the world where you're working, but by and large, these pathogens, the most common ones include Pseudomonas, Acinetobacter, Klebsiella, and MRSA. We have enough data saying that 7-day treatment is good enough. You don't have to treat all VAPs with 10 to 14 days, but your patient has to obviously respond to the treatment. So hospital-acquired pneumonia is a pneumonia which is occurring more than 48 hours after hospital admission. Okay, oral care with chlorhexidine. This is helpful in the Western population where there is a low incidence of antimicrobial resistance. In developing countries, this is not very helpful. Okay, so this again depends on the local policy. Subglottic secretion is part of the present prevention bundle associated with good evidence, and hand hygiene is also associated with good evidence. These are the present components of the prevention bundle. These interventions, when done together, reduce the VAP incidence and also the duration of mechanical ventilation. So this 7 days, there are obviously exceptions. Certain cases you have to prolong the duration of therapy. Pseudomonas, like if you have a difficult to treat pseudomonas, then most guidelines say at least 10 days. There were large scale studies done on this, and those saw that even in these kind of organisms like pseudomonas, acinetobacter, your 7 days is good enough when compared to 10 to 14 days, provided that there is clinical response. So we are looking more at clinical response, and in 7 days you've achieved all your targets, you can just stop it. You don't have to continue it just because of the organism.